Hello, everyone. This is my episode 3 video for Wheel of Time. I have a lot to say because, in my opinion, this was the best episode so far, and this is the best season so far. I just really enjoyed it. Once again, still using the old computer, so I've typed all my notes up, and I'm just going to try and do one single run through without any edits because the software literally lights this computer on fire if I even tried to do like one cut and splice. So let me get right into it. We're going to start out with the cold open, and they didn't wait very long for the Robin reveal. I knew Gabriel was I knew he was too good to be true. The fact that everyone in the royal family seems to think they know and love and trust him must mean that the compulsion isn't just on Morghese. He's only been free for a month, and yet Elaine greeted him as an old friend. So has she already been compulsed by him, or did he do it on the fly? Same with like when he met Swan and all them. They kind of had that jump step of like, who are you? What's your name? And Gabriel. Okay, so they're kind of, and I realized they kind of showed that like he is using the compulsion as he goes. The other Forsaken even say he has a knack for compulsion. But anyways, the fact that they kind of are already scheming, with they got Mogedion in the background. He's scheming with Lanfear. Samael is there, which, by the way, Samael reveal. The casting looks about as good as you could get. His accent fits kind of what I had in my mind, and then props to the makeup artist for doing an amazing job with like the scars on his face. We do get a proper look at traveling. I'm not sure it's 100% how I imagined it, but it is pretty good. I think in my head it was more of like a defined border on the edges of the portal, like that could cut through somebody if you sent it. It was still really cool to see on screen though, and also I think you're supposed to see what's behind them, like perfectly when they travel. But maybe because they want to hide it from the other Forsaken, they're putting some type of screen up over it. So maybe that's what it is. We kind of get a little bit of exposition and motivations for their actions, and we're introduced to the concept of nameless, which I always pronounced as two distinct words like nameless, but I guess it's nameless. Anyways, Robin reveals that Grendile and Semirog are out and that he is in contact with them, which I can't to see wait to see what those two look like. Grendile, definitely much more than the other. But yeah, so the two leave, and then Mogedion shows up, and it seems like her and Robin maybe have a side plan hatched with each other. Unfortunately, I couldn't really focus too hard on what they were saying because that Jim Carrey Dumb and Dumber haircut really gets me every time. But anyways, I thought it was a great cold open that introduced us to two Forsaken, revealed some of their backstory, their motivations, their reservations, and it kind of already has the viewer seeing that this is a conniving bunch of lunatics that will stab each other in the back at any second. I love that. Jump to Tarvalon. We have Joya and Amiko are being questioned. I enjoyed watching this scene. It might not be a page for page from the books, but it was still recognizable enough that it kind of gave me that good feeling that you get when you see stuff that you like, that you know. It makes you feel good. What I did like is they introduced us to the idea of the hearts, which is how the Black Aja communicates and remains anonymous throughout the tower. I thought that was a neat addition. I don't know if that was ever mentioned, but it kind of does make sense. Like the idea that you only know one other person and they only know a couple other people or two other people, and thus it branches through the tower and they can get stuff out. Elida has kind of this handshaky thing going on. I'm curious what that's about. Is she going to have some type of illness that she's trying to beat? Is it like a tick that happens when she gets foretellings or visions or something's going on? I don't know. Is it something that's going to motivate her to make some type of drastic decision? We'll see. As far as the gray man goes in the episode, I only noticed him once in the market area behind Nynaeve and Elaine, but I guess he was in other scenes too. I kind of hope they keep the creepiness of them going, like keep the creepy level of the gray men like that going forward. I hope it doesn't just like fade out. A lot of times, like with bad guys in TV shows, they'll introduce them in this like dramatic fashion, and then they're like run in the mill bad dudes in the future, which I guess does happen as the book series comes on, as our characters grow and become more powerful. Like the bad guys are just kind of like cannon fodder at some point. I am glad that the side point of Leandrin having a son was used for something. Honestly, I actually liked that it was kind of a clever ad to serve as a conduit. The girls use it to deduce that Leandrin has returned to Chanchico, which launches the whole nother plot line that I was not ready to be incredibly interested in, but here we are. So whoever wrote these Leandrin pieces and these little tidbits, you get a gold star. Um, Elida fat shames Varen, so screw you. Um, but anyways, I'm curious what Elida's angle is. I'm surprised the other Reds are so hostile to her. I wonder what happened to cause it. She's been gone for years, so maybe that's it. But like, what else did she do? I don't know. They heavily lean into the plan to cage Rand in this episode, and it appears this might be one of her end goals. But Elida leaves, but not without making it fairly apparent she is here to stay and isn't going to leave the Reds alone because they kind of tell her to piss off, and she's like, nah, I'm here. Jump to the Aiel Waste. I'm already grinning ear to ear hearing Ruark talk about how things are Wise One's business, and he just says it like 3 times in a row. Um, we're introduced to the idea of water being important to the Aiel and how scarce it is, and that they go to war with it, and that it should be taken seriously. So keep that in mind as we go forward, because I'm sure water in the Aiel is not going to be just dropped. I'm sure that will be a plot point or a point of conflict as time goes on. We get a little bit of information on the Shido. They're a bunch of bad hombres. We don't like them. They're bad guys. I always liked in Wheel of Time how like there is some semblance of like, oh, that's women's circle business. Then they get to the waist and it's like, oh, that's Wise One's business, and it's, oh, that's Aes Sedai business. I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. The fact that the ashes on Alana's face are actually Ivan's remains was kind of a interesting touch. Definitely did not. I didn't catch that the first time I watched it through, or no, yeah, I did. But either way, just interesting. Bane and Chiad trying to play Maiden's Kiss with Loyal and then Maxim. Those two, I guess, are just aggressively horny. No, I'm gonna keep that comment to myself. Lord Luke is introduced, and I already hate him. I don't know why, but he kind of gives me the vibe of like the bad guy Pilgrim in movies, that like the one that always ends up double crossing the Native Americans, but like comes off as a good guy first. Um, First glimpse of Fail, and I love the casting choice. The eyes, face, everything, great job. We'll get more into that later. But one thing I did want to touch on, because I talked about how much I liked Dane Bornhald's character previously, is we get him kind of trying to deal with his commitment to the White Cloaks, but also having like Valda and everything going on. So Dane is trying to find Perrin, but is also trying to hold back Valda from being the monster that he is. He's struggling with his desire for revenge and willingness to uphold the standards of the Children of the Light, which is huge, and it's not going to be a thing that goes away. And I'm kind of interested to see how his character deals with the rest of the season. Back in Tar Valon, a gray man tries to attack Nynaeve and Elaine, and they go outside, and he's stabbed in the back. And Varen's there acting super suspicious, but basically just kind of pans it off. But what the girls realize is that the tower is not safe for them. Like, Varen's kind of someone they trusted before. This makes her not trust Varen, and they realize that like nobody there is trustworthy. Like, that's why Swan only told them. So they deduce that they must go to Tenjiko, and they have to leave tonight, which gives us our first glimpse of Tenjiko, the Panarch's Palace, which I guess Leandrin used to be married to someone that lived there, so maybe she has some claim to it or whatever. But yeah, so whoever wrote this alternative Leandrin plot line, you're doing the Lord's work, because this was brutal. She kind of interrupts this child bride being married off and gives us a backstory on her own wedding, which was at 13. And she literally rips this dude's heart out of his chest, which was brutal. I love it. Once again, these are changes that they are making to the show from the books that make it more enjoyable to watch, that are winners. I've noted the changes in this season are more winners than losers, so I hope they keep that up. I do feel bad for the girl she lobotomized, though. That was a little bit fucked up. To each their own, I guess. I think that should drive home the fact that Leandrin, I don't think they're going for us to properly feel bad for her in this season. She's a bad guy. Back to the White Tower, Elida discussing foretelling with Min and the power it can hold. I do wonder how she mentions like a blue sister that gave her some advice. I wonder who that blue sister is supposed to be. I was almost wondering if it was Moraine or if it was Swan. But anyways, we get a little more backstory on Elida, and she schemes a bit with her conversation with Min, knowing that Min is absolutely going to go tell Swan what she just told her. We're introduced to the idea of dreamwalkers. Melina, and Amis are the only two in the Tardat Aiel, and Egwene could potentially be the next one. She kind of gives Egwene a little insight on how dreaming works, which did I say Elaine? I meant Egwene. Egwene, basically, Egwene thinks Ren is dead, but she's causing her harm in the dream world. But like, if Ren is dead, she couldn't be in the dream causing her harm. She's gone. So that kind of leaves the question: who's hurting Egwene? We know as the viewer that it was Lanfear, but I wonder how Egwene will approach this in future dreams coming forward. Lanfear is still meeting with Rand in their dreams and introduces the idea of using the powerful Sa'angreal to possibly take on the Dark One himself. I'm not sure if I believe that's her motivation or not. It could just be her trying to manipulate Rand. But one thing, obviously, that I'm sure jumped out at a lot of people is the Sarkarian being for women and Kalendor being for men, having those two things distinct. There's end of the book plot lines that obviously changes up a little bit. So we'll see how that works. But then again, I don't know. She could just be lying and scheming. Are they replacing the access keys with just Kalendor and the Sarkarian? That's what I want to know. But I feel like in the preview stuff, we saw Moiraine holding some type of orb, which I was thinking maybe was the act. Like, I don't know. So that'll be interesting to see. Sweat tents, we get the sweat tents. That's pretty straightforward, about as close to what I could imagine in my head. We do get a scene where Lan is trying to convince Moraine to go get her rocks off with one of the Aiel women, and Moraine is doing the same thing to Lan. So I'm wondering, is Moraine strictly into women in the show? I don't think it really honestly wouldn't have much impact to the actual story of Wheel of Time. Obviously, it changes a few things up, but not consequential if you really want to be honest with yourself if Moraine is just a straight lesbian. Melindra's role, I'm sorry if I'm saying her name wrong, appears to have changed from the books, at least for now. Her character is set up as a conduit for Lan's storytelling. She has this tattoo on her back that Lan recognizes, and when he goes to confront her about it, he finds out she's a survivor of the fall of Malkyr and one of his people. She explains that she's ready to abandon the Aiel and follow Lan at a moment's notice, which is huge because Aiel are very dedicated people. Honestly, I thought this was a decent change to add some setup to Lan's character and show how he struggles with the call of his bloodline and the oaths he has to Moiraine and the White Tower. It also gives us an idea of just how dedicated the people of Malkyr are. So we can probably take that going forward, and now we know it. So great ad. I think that's a fine way to go about it and a good way to condense some storytelling. We head back to Perrin in the Two Rivers, and it's revealed to us that Trollocs have been attacking, and although the White Cloaks are a nuisance, they do provide some type of protection to the people. Perrin wants to turn himself in order to return the Cawthon safely, but in true Two Rivers fashion, none of the villagers are having it, other than Senbui, but they shut his shit down real quick. They wisely mentioned that by having the White Cloaks around, they have some type of protection from the Trollocs, so if Perrin turns himself in, then they lose that. Side note, is this a new Senbui actor? For some reason, I thought they killed him in the Trolloc attack in Season 1, but Emmons Field's #1 roofing contractor is still alive and kicking and still a thorn in everyone's side. The actress that plays Fael conveys a lot of information in her eyes, and they kind of linger, the camera lingers on her watching Perrin like a hawk, when he's speaking. I really think they're doing a phenomenal job introducing characters this season and slowly rolling out their importance and their personas as time goes on. One scene that actually made me somewhat emotional was Maxim and Alana discussing Ivan. Maxim is heartbroken over losing him, and he can tell through the bond that Alana does not feel remotely on the same level, or he says she feels nothing. Maybe she's hiding her emotions from him, which I think is very hard to do with the water bond. So it kind of adds a little bit of mystery to what Alana is up to in the Two Rivers, since Maxim doesn't even know. With the Black Aja revealed, it makes you wonder if Alana has some type of ulterior motive. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but the scene where Perrin and Fael sit down and finally have a conversation gave me this like warm feeling inside. Like if you ever drove home after a semester of college, like your first semester being away, you drive home, you kind of get this warm, fuzzy feeling driving into town. That's how those two talking to each other felt to me. I'm glad they included the Mandarb line. I thought that was a nice touch. And throughout the conversation, you can see her eyes studying him. And I really think they did a great job with the casting on this one. And how they just introduced Fael now instead of earlier feels like a decent decision. I'll throw that in the basket of changes the show made that kind of makes sense and help move the story along, but also kept us from being overburdened early on with new characters and events and things going on. Back in the White Tower, we've got Matt and Min kind of discussing things with each other and they're kind of trying to come to terms. Matt's trying to apologize, and then Min sees a vision of Matt hanging lifeless inside of a twisted doorway. I won't dive too much into the meaning of this, but one wonders how Matt will find himself in those situations, because after all, everything Min sees does happen. And I've got a feel for Min because this has happened her entire life, and she was just talking about how she lost her chance to lose these visions. And here she is seeing the inevitable death of someone she cares about. Again. We get some White Tower scheming. Alana and Swan must have heard from Min about the Reds wanting to potentially call an important vote, so the Red Sitter is being sent away to try and capture Mazrim Taim. No Red Sitter, no Red vote. However, this seems like something Elida saw coming from a mile away, because she instantly introduces the idea of an interim sitter while the head of the Red Aja is gone. She's also not only leaving, she's leaving to go confront a false dragon, so there is a possibility that she doesn't come back at all, which would work out in Elida's favor, because if she comes an interim sitter, she could then keep the spot and use the failure of that capture as ammo against Swan. Big moves in the tower, all right? Big politicking. We love Aes Sedai politicking. Back in the Two Rivers, the strings of destiny are pulling on Perrin. The villagers begin to disband for their farms, and he has to step in and explain to them that they have strength in numbers. They need to stay together. The Trollocs will pick them off piece by piece, one by one at a time if they separate. I will say Perrin's actor is one that I've been kind of waiting to see him hit his stride. Maybe this is me being silly, but I kind of wish as he started to discuss the plans and meet all the people, he tucked his shoulders back and stood up a little straighter. But I think that is maybe that's something over time Fael works on with him or talks to him about, as we get a little scene with those two later on. Minor critique of the show, I love the speeches and people's reactions to it, but sometimes it feels like they add excessive audio to drive points across. It almost reminds me of like a laugh track, and sometimes it takes me out of a good scene. This kind of happened after Perrin's speech, and then what was it? The Galad and Gowan, when they were initially fighting each other with all the Aes Sedai watching them. The extra audio sometimes feels like a bit much. Back in the White Tower, Matt is blowing off some steam in the training yard, and Nynaeve comes to tell him that they are leaving to find Liandrin. They kind of go back and forth about it, and thus sets up the catalyst for a scene we've all been waiting for since the show and casting for both Matt, Gowan, Galad, and here it is. A mere son of a horse trader from the backwoods, armed with nothing but a wooden quarterstaff, versus two royal knights in training, but with one secret weapon, a gambling addiction, and a link to today's sponsor, FanDuel. Seriously though, take notice of any time Matt places a wager on something, because he places a wager on this, and sure enough, it goes pretty well in his favor. So I'm grinning ear to ear at this point as this starts to unfold. I thought the choreography was great. I thought it was a decent way to fit this scene in. Maybe not exactly what was ideal. The only thing I wish we kind of had, like if it was more one to one, was Hammer talking about how the only time a fighter in history, the best fighter in history, lost was to a farmer with a quarterstaff. Um, but c'est la vie. The look on Nynaeve's face was priceless after watching this. You could tell she was so proud of the little boy from her village beating the shit out of these two knights. It was an extremely fitting climax for an amazing episode so far. And then after it, we get this little tidbit. I'm really enjoying the expanded role they're giving Leandrin, and I think it's a good conduit to show how different dark friends are motivated to the shadow. I don't think they're trying to make her this morally gray character. She's a bad cat through and through. So our final plot thread that comes from this is that there is a male collar out there. It's designed to control male channelers, and the Black Aja aims to use it on the Dragon Reborn. Unfortunately for Leandrin, one of the servants walking around has different plans for that male collar. So Megenian's walking around. She's a much more powerful and better hombre than everybody there, and it'll be interesting to see what her plan is for this group. But with that, our episode concludes, and I have to say this was probably my favorite one so far. Episode 1 is up there, but the cold open brings it as close, but I still choose this one. There was a pleasant absence of moments that made me scratch my head and wonder why they make certain decisions in this episode, which I think is the biggest change from season 2 to season 3. I was enjoying season 2 for the most part, but like 1 or 2 times per episode, they would do something, say something that really took me out of it, or like there was a thing. It's not happening in this one. And they're really nailing it. This is my favorite like cluster of 3 episodes since season 1, episodes 1 through 3 dropped. Those are like my comfort food. Those are the ones I go back and watch more often than not. I really don't go back and watch many of the other episodes in the show. There's a couple here and there that I'll go back and watch, but like I can already see myself going back to watch these last 3 episodes and enjoying it. After watching a lot of the episodes in season 2, I wasn't as motivated to go back and watch them. This one, I'm sitting back watching these episodes trying to like type my notes up, and like I lose focus of typing the notes because I'm just watching the episode because I'm enjoying it so much. So they're definitely on the right track, and I'm extremely happy about it. Let me know what you guys think. Are you in the same boat? Are you enjoying this as much as I am? I'm extremely happy with the show. I can't wait for episode 4. I'm really happy I got all 3 of these videos out somehow in 1 week. I fucking hate the 3 episode release. I hate because also I was extremely busy coaching hockey and putting on community service or community events and stuff the last week, and then my computer dies, but here we are. Everybody's got problems, but we did it. We got the episode out, and now episode 4 is gonna drop while I'm on a ski trip in Vermont. So I guess I'll see you guys right after that trip, and I will get my video out. But until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for discussing. Let me know what you think about this episode, and I will see you after episode 4.